But first, there's no doubt our country has a duty, an absolute duty, to look after everyone who's taken risks for Australia, including Afghans who worked alongside our soldiers to fight the Taliban. But we don't have anything like the same duty to people who worked on aid projects that Australia sponsored. They were there, of course, doing good with our help, with our millions of dollars, but they were working to rebuild their own country, not protecting our servicemen and women in the same way as the translators were working with our diggers. The plight of our locally engaged staff in Afghanistan and all the others involved in the American-led nation-building effort in that country is obviously front and centre right now as Allied troops withdraw and the Taliban reconquer large parts of the country. With US intelligence reporting that Kabul could fall to the Taliban within 6 months of departure, it's tempting to say it was all futile, that the 41 Australians, the 450 Britons and the 2,500 Americans killed in Afghanistan over the past 20 years somehow died in vain. Yet it's never useless to try and bring the rule of law to a lawless place, to take on the terrorists, to get more kids into school, particularly young girls, to put in better roads and power in many of these communities, to try and create economic opportunities other than the heroin trade, and to give more people a say over their own government. That's never wrong, even if after everything, some of the gains are then reversed. Whatever happens in Afghanistan, whatever happens from here on in, it will be better for experiencing some justice and some freedom and some of the universal decencies, however short-lived, that they were granted, and hope that seeds of change have been planted. Someday down the track, the times will be better. But in the meantime, our obligation is not to every Afghan, because we can't bring them all here. We have an obligation to those who were part of our war effort on their behalf. People like the interpreter shot and left behind and then rescued under enemy fire by Corporal Mark Donaldson, who won the Victoria Cross, that incredible act of bravery, carrying him 80 metres to safety. All the people who worked for the Australian government and their immediate family, especially if they worked with our military, deserve sanctuary in Australia. And so far, since our combat units left in 2013, some 1,400 specially created visas have been issued to locally engaged staff and their families to live here in Australia. Now, I hate to say it, but it is different if you weren't working for the Australian government. If you were working instead for Red Cross or Save the Children, any number of charities. Even if you were working alongside Australian diplomats or aid workers on Australian-funded projects, it's not the same as being directly employed by Australia. Now, there's every reason to think that anyone who worked closely with Western agencies could be in danger from the Taliban. If so, there's every reason to think that the Afghans who once worked closely with these NGOs and charities could qualify as refugees under the same standard humanitarian program we offer. But that's separate to the special visa class for what's called locally engaged Afghan staff, those who worked alongside our military. It's very different. But if people get the generalised humanitarian visa, that stacks up. They could be part of the 18,000 we admit every year on humanitarian grounds as refugees. But take it from me, governments have to operate on the basis of cool heads, not just warm hearts. And the job of ministers is to exercise judgment and to do justice, not just show compassion, because Australia can't be a rescue raft for everyone who wants a better life or an economic outcome. Australia has more than done its fair share in Afghanistan. We can only hope that the government there manages to steady itself and continue to support international efforts to help, while we do everything possible to strengthen our own country in a world that's becoming steadily less secure. Amidst all the ongoing anxiety over this virus, I hope we haven't forgotten the perils of toxic ideology, religious extremism, and the mortal danger that they pose, because unlike COVID, there's no vaccine yet against Islamic terrorism.